All right, this is the second absolute value lesson, and it's going to start with some review from the day before from your previous ed puzzle. So we are trying to answer the question, if absolute value of x equals 7, what were the values of x that were inside that absolute value box or happy box that kicked out a 7? What do you think the solutions were? Hopefully you said that the solutions were x equals 7, because 7 is 7 away from 0, and x equals -7, because both of those values would work. All right, so then we take the next one. It says, if the absolute value of x equals 16, what is x? Go ahead and answer that. Hopefully you said it was x equals 16 or -16. And there's a fancy way to write that. Remember, mathematicians are lazy. So we came up with a symbol. It looks like this. That means 16 or -16. How would you rewrite this? Here you'd say 7 or -7. So people say plus or -7. Okay, last one. If absolute value of x equals -2, what is x? And you may recall this from the last problem when we looked at the graph, but remember, this is the happy box. Everything comes out positive. So will it ever come out a -2? Nope, it will not. So there's actually no solution to this one. So just watch out for that. Can an absolute value, just a plain absolute value, ever equal a negative number? And the answer is no. All right, so then we're going to move on to the new topic for today. And this one has, instead of just having the absolute value of x equals 7, we've now added one more step on these three and two more steps on those three. So we're going to be doing some undoing. So I brought in the t-charts ahead of time for you, so you don't have to watch me make them. And you have to answer this question: how do I undo adding 2? The answer is you subtract 2. So what is 7 minus 2? And the answer is 5. All right, now you don't stop here, because how many answers does most absolute value problems have? That's correct. They have 2. And so you're thinking to yourself, what 2 numbers have an absolute value of 5? And then you can say that x equals 5 or -5. All right, we'll move on to the next one. We're going to t-chart this again. How do you undo subtract 5? Yep, you add 5. And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. All right, so that -5 is gone, and what you have instead is absolute value of x equals, and what's 16 plus 5? That's right, 21. All right, we're not done yet, because we have to think what numbers are the same distance from 0 that are 21. And the answer is 21 or -21. All right, we got one more of those. How do you undo a -8? You add 8. So while I'm prepping this, why don't you go ahead and tell me, what is -2 plus 8? The answer is 6. And finally, what numbers have an absolute value of 6? And hopefully you're now a highly trained professional and you can tell me it's 6 or -6. Now notice with that problem that when we first started it, it said it equaled a -2. And earlier we said it can't equal negative answers. But that's when it's just like this up in front where it says absolute value of x equals -2. There's no wiggle room. When this is by itself over here, it can't equal a negative. But when we had that -8 there, that was a game changer. So you can't really decide if it can have an answer or not until you add the 8 to both sides and get this by itself. And then voila, It's a positive 6, so it's okay. There's a solution. All right, so now the real reason we're working these out is these questions here. These are two-steppers. So when you do these, you have to decide, am I going to undo the times 4 first, or am I going to undo the plus 1 first? The correct answer is that we're going to undo the plus 1 first. Now you might think, but I learned PEMDAS, and on PEMDAS, multiplication and division comes before adding and subtracting. And that's true when you're plugging numbers in. If you're plugging a number in for x, you would multiply by 4 first and then add 1. But keep in mind that we're not doing PEMDAS. We're doing what I like to lovingly call SADMIP, which means we're undoing, so we're doing subtracting, or undoing the subtracting and adding, undoing the multiplying, dividing, undoing the exponents, and undoing the parentheses. So you actually do it the opposite. So the first thing you do is undo the plus 1. And how do you undo adding 1? You subtract 1. All right. The 4 times the absolute value of x is still here. And what is 37 minus 1? 36. How do you undo multiplying by 4? You divide by 4. What is 36 divided by 4? And your answer is 9. Now, are we done at this point? The answer is no, because we still have to say what numbers have an absolute value of 9. And hopefully you're just excited to do what we did up here before, where you say x equals 9, or what? Negative 9. All right, so we had an extra step. Wasn't the end of the world. Just felt like it. All right, in this one, what are you going to undo first, the times 3 or the minus 8? Hopefully you said the minus 8. So we're going to add 8. And what is 22 plus 8? The answer is we have 3 times x equals 30. How do you undo that 3? You divide by 3. What is 30 divided by 3? 10. Are we done? Nope. What numbers have an absolute value of 10? And this is where, if you were writing this yourself, you might write the plus or minus 10. I don't have that as an option with the keyboard the way it is, so I have to say x is equal to 10 or negative 10. But the further we get into this, the more you can write the plus or minus 10. All right, last one. So now you have to decide, what am I going to undo? Am I going to undo the 2 first or the minus 8? Hopefully you're still going to go for the minus 8. And how do you undo a minus 8? You add 8. What's negative 2 plus 8? Hopefully you remember that from a previous problem, or at least it feels familiar. The answer is 6. How do you undo that 2? You divide by 2. What's 6 divided by 2? The answer is 3. And then you just have to think, okay, what numbers have an absolute value of 3? And last but not least, it's x equals 3 or negative 3. And that's the new topic of this lesson.